All right, here we go. So we were asked to compare and contrast the two regions, the Chesapeake region, which is Virginia, kind of in the south, and the New England region, which is kind of in the north. So the prompt at the top here is asking to compare and contrast the development of two English colonial societies. So this is the key here, societies. So we're looking at the big picture here of the societies and how they were set up and how they were similar and how they were different. Now, yours might be different than mine in terms of what you have here. I want to point out that you don't have to fill up every single bubble here on this double bubble. You'll notice that in this bottom middle one, I don't have anything there, and that's okay. I do have all four here, but if you only have three, that's okay too. I just want to see that you are actually making an effort to put stuff in here. So I'm going to start with similarities here. Both the Chesapeake region and the New England region are both sharing an English culture. What I mean by that is they were settled by the English, obviously. They share a common language, and they both kind of have this anti-Catholic feeling. In New England, there are Puritans, and in Virginia, even in Maryland, which was supposed to be a Catholic refuge, they were still anti-Catholic there. So we have this anti-Catholic feeling because that's how it was in England. They were a Protestant country, and they share that common language. Both also share a conflicting relationship with Native Americans. You have the suppression of the Powhatan in Virginia, that's like Pocahontas and that kind of thing. And then King Philip's War in New England, which was the last major uprising of the natives. And after that point, the native resistance kind of ended. So the relationship between the people of the Chesapeake and the people of New England and the relationship with the natives was one marked by conflict. The last similarity I have here is that both were interested in self-governing, kind of governing themselves. The House of Burgesses in Virginia, which is a representative assembly, which is kind of a semi-democratic body, mostly made up of the elites in Virginia. And then in New England, you had these town meetings where the towns got together and they voted on their selectmen, basically the people that would make decisions. So in both cases, they're kind of electing representatives to make decisions for their community. Okay, so those are our similarities. Now, if we look at our differences, I always like to match things up here. On the difference over here matches up to the difference here. So you'll see like the word society is here, and society is based on, society is based around. So these are kind of talking about the same idea, the same grouping of what society is based around. And in New England, they were based around towns. They had these small, tight-knit communities based with families, as we saw from the passenger list. While in the Chesapeake, the society is based on agriculture and plantations. And that means that people are more isolated because they live further away from each other, because you have these large plantations and the next plantation or next farm over was a ways away. Whereas in New England, the towns are pretty close together. You have houses that are pretty close together, and you see families and talking to each other every single day. You could go to your neighbors and that sort of thing. And the Puritan religion was all about being tight-knit because they were so persecuted in England that they all kind of relied on each other. So that's a key difference. So tight-knit communities here, whereas they're more isolated here in the Chesapeake. A second difference in the Chesapeake is based on the kinds of conflicts that they had, or internal conflicts. So you see internal conflicts here, and you see internal conflicts there. So you should always be doing that when you're looking at differences, is trying to find match pairs here. So in New England, the internal conflicts they had, that means conflicts within their society. I'm not talking about conflict with natives here. I'm talking about conflicts within the New England society, were based on religious ideas. For example, you have Roger Williams and Anne Hutchinson, who both questioned the leadership of the New England societies, the Puritan societies, and as a result, they were banished or banned. You also had the Salem witch trials, which was a conflict in Salem among the people in the town. There were some people accusing other people of being witches, and this kind of was this hysteria. If you ever read The Crucible, it's kind of about that idea. Whereas in the Chesapeake, their internal conflicts weren't based around religion. They were based on economic divisions, like Bacon's Rebellion. Remember Bacon's Rebellion? You have the lower class, these former indentured servants that were upset because they felt like they were not being protected by the government. and they weren't getting what was promised to them, so they rebelled, which kind of makes sense because the economic divisions here relate a lot to why the Chesapeake was founded, for economic gain, whereas New England was founded for religious freedom, so their conflicts are based around religion. Another difference is the Chesapeake region has strict social classes. You can't really move from one class to the other. At the top, you have plantations. In the middle, you have the small farmers, and at the bottom, you have the African slaves. The plantations was where most of the slaves were. Most small farmers did not have slaves, but this is called social stratification. You couldn't be a slave and then become a small farmer and then become a plantation owner. That what option was not available. So wherever you started off, that's pretty much where you ended up. So they had these strict social classes. On the other hand, in New England, they were kind of mostly all the same social class. There were some differences, but they didn't own slaves. They were all white. Many of them were from that middle kind of merchant class, as we saw from the passenger ships. So they were a little more what's called homogenous. They were more similar to each other. Okay, our last difference is down here with in terms of like the idea of a patriarchy. If you don't know what a patriarchy is kind of a society where it's dominated by men, where men have the primary role in society and women have a lesser role. In New England, there was a strong patriarchy. Women had very little control over their lives. Their husbands kind of ruled. It's tied up with religion as well as with the idea that in New England, you tended to have better health, and so the men lived longer, and so they were around to make decisions. And women, had one husband because their husband stayed alive and didn't die, so the men were kind of in charge. On the other hand, over here, I'm going to move this pointer out of the way here so you can see it. Women had some kind of agency or some kind of choices. They could choose who they could marry. They had some authority in the family. That's because early on in the Chesapeake, health was worse. And so a woman might marry somebody in the Chesapeake and then their husband would die. And so they'd marry again. So it wasn't unusual for a woman to have married a couple of times because her first husband might have died. And so that gave women some choices because they were able to get some property, they were able to have a little bit of wealth themselves, and they could choose kind of who they were marrying. So those are some of the differences. I'm not saying there aren't others or other similarities, but these are some ones that kind of stood out here that you could think of, and they kind of could tie in with some of the other things that we've talked about. Okay, so now you've seen these two we can look at we looked at the similarities and differences between these two societies and how they were set up. We can maybe answer that. Maybe answer this prompt and figure out whether they're more similar or more different based on what you see here. Okay. All right. Well, hopefully you can figure that out and give it a shot to write a thesis.